Hi everyone. Well, now we have a very interesting panel about interoperability, more specific about interoperability in the optimism ecosystem, I guess. All of the chats we have here are contribute in some form to the optimism collective. Um, and to start, I think the most appropriate thing would be to have every one of them introduce themselves very quickly.
The SuperChain, dude. It's not optimism.
Oh, sorry.
SuperChain. Hi, I'm Gunnar. I'm the Grants Council lead at Optimism Governance. I've been in the space for the last 5 years. I started by training developers into Solidity for free. That became a public good. The public good became something that the retro funding funded, and then I moved to governance. And I ended up here just allocating capital for developers.
I'm Lavant, and I'm the head of governance at the Optimism Foundation, and I was a first hire at the foundation.
Hi guys, nice to meet you. I'm Santiago, the global developer advocate for Lisk. I like to call myself as the first DevRel to make a Web3 Africa tour. So I started last year in Ghana, Nigeria, Kenya, and Uganda. When I was there, at that time I was the DevRel for Web3.js, JavaScript library for Ethereum. And every time that I was going to every country, I was seeing this sponsor that was called Lisk everywhere. And that's how I ended up working at Lisk, because I was doing this Africa tour for Web3.js. I met some people from Lisk, and now I ended up joining Lisk last year, and now I'm here.
Cool. Well, and I'm NT. I see some familiar faces here. I won't take too much time. I contribute to LIDAR right now. It's not relevant to the conversation, so let's proceed. First, to get everyone on the same page, I think would be helpful if any of you guys can sort of introduce people to optimism and the SuperChain. Like, what is it and why?
You want me to
I'll
go?
add anything you want.
Okay, what's the SuperChain? So the SuperChain is a set of chains that are going to become interoperable. That means that they can communicate on the same block, right? Like you won't have bridges between them. It will enable the transaction of tokens to be on the exact same block for both chains, right? That's what we're trying to achieve. I don't know if you want to add something more to that description of the SuperChain.
Sure. Yeah. So, Optimism is a Ethereum L2 built using the OP stack, and so you can have a bunch of chains that use the OP stack. And if you're on what we call the standard configuration of the OP stack, then you're part of the SuperChain. There's like a few more requirements, but basically that's it. And then there'll be a set of those chains that can interoperate in the future. So from the idea or the goal is that from the user experience, if you're on any chain in the SuperChain, it all just feels like one chain, basically, which is not what the experience is right now.
I'll add my 2 cents there.
Sure.
So I really like the SuperChain because the main issue that we have with Ethereum is scalability. Ethereum blocks can only support 30 million gas units, so this is kind of translated to 1,400 transactions every block. Every block is created every 12 seconds. And the issue is that we really want to expand Ethereum everywhere in the world. That will not really be, I guess, scalable at all. So this is a really good approach of having all these layer 2s coming and joining the SuperChain to be part of the same goal of scaling Ethereum.
Yeah, that's how we came up with the vision for the SuperChain, right? At first it was just OP mainnet, and we wanted to scale Ethereum, and then we were like, oh, one chain is not going to be enough to support like internet scale transactions. Then we created OP stack, and people could fork OP stack, but then you have like a really fragmented experience, and if I have tokens on one OP chain and I need to get them on another OP chain, it's like I need different wallets, and it's just like a bad experience. So, but with the SuperChain, we can hopefully reach that scalability that we're trying to reach with many chains, but with a user experience that doesn't need to understand that there's many chains supporting that.
Cool, excellent. Now we are all in the same page. Just a quick note, a quick heads up. If anyone here doesn't understand anything, feel free to ask and we can do a quick translation to Spanish.
No, can you speak a bit louder?
Okay. Okay, we'll do. Just because I think interoperability is probably one of the biggest unlocks in the Ethereum ecosystem, so don't be shy. Just ask, interact. We can do this very dynamic. Also, let's continue with this. How this is going to work? Just for the sake of time, I'm going to do one question to each one of you, but also feel free to chime in if there's any quick comment about others' questions. Let's start with you, Lavande. We now have a bunch of chains in the SuperChain. How is it that Optimism is planning to integrate all of them?
Into the governance system?
Yes,
Yeah,
into the governance system,
okay,
yes.
yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I need to talk about it. Sorry, I'm super soft-spoken, so I will try. Yeah, so we think that the chains they want to participate in governance in a few ways. One, it's very important to a lot of them to be involved in the core development process. So we now have a public, what we call SUP process, which is the SuperChain upgrade process, so that other chains can have their core development teams contribute to the OP stack. And then what governance does is basically approve the proposed protocol upgrades. So we have chains that want to participate as delegates in governance. We have a program that's onboarding the first 20 OP chains with some temporary delegation to get them involved. But basically, these upgrades really, really impact the chains because it's what they run their business on. And they also are very strong opinions about what features and functionality should be added, and so the governance system is essentially the way that they can influence the development of the OP stack for their needs, basically. Cool,
perfect. And well, for those who doesn't know, the Optimism governance works in seasons. This current season is very focused on Interop or getting ready for Interop. And this one is for you, Gona. How is it that maybe people here, or just in general, how is it that that people can get involved, or that grants are being focused on Interop?
So what happens is every season the foundation defines an intent for this season is to have interoperable TVL ready to go when the first chains connect themselves to the SuperChain, right? So the idea right now is we're giving grants to these DeFi projects that are using the OP tokens as user incentives to come up with TVL, but that TVL needs to be ready to go. That means that the standard token they are using is different because it has these new functions to be interoperable, and it's on these specific chains that are coming first to the interoperable set. And that's basically what we're focusing for the next 4 months. It's just TVL, but it's interoperable ready is what I like to call it.
So it's like what Circle did when they changed USDC. Now the whole
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah. We have, for example, one of the biggest applicants was Spark. Spark was granted 2 million OP tokens, and they are changing the structure of the token, so it becomes immediately interoperable the second the chains are connected.
Okay, cool.
So if you get a loan in Spark today, your tokens are already interoperable. So if tomorrow, I don't know, OP mainnet base and Uni become interoperable, you don't need to do anything. The token is there. It's ready to come and go between chains with no bridges.
You could move USDS as a single token.
So we're focusing on that strategy, get everyone ready to have an interoperable asset.
Cool. Now, from the perspective of a chain, and that's for you Santiago, why is it that Lisk decides to go with the SuperChain and not other stack, and how do you see what's happening right now with Interop?
So just to provide some context, because I know that most of you don't know about Lisk, we are just kind of starting here in South America. Lisk started as a layer 1 in 2016, and we just decided to join the Ethereum ecosystem last year. And then we were doing this research of what's the best way or the best approach to join the Ethereum ecosystem. And that's how I ended up joining the SuperChain, because they really share the Ethereum values. It's a really good open source sharing infrastructure for everyone. And that's last year we just kind of pivot from the layer 1 that we have from JavaScript, that it was building dApps in JavaScript, to the layer 2 part of the SuperChain. We really like the SuperChain so far for all the different governance and how they are supporting the developers and all the public goods in the ecosystem. Actually, I was the past 3 months doing some more workshops in Africa. I researched a lot about the Season 7 right now. And for the founders, for the developers here, they have 8 million of OP tokens for developer tooling and also for dApps deployed in the SuperChain until June 31st, something like that. Yeah, so that's like a really good thing that at the end of the day, we are not competitors. All of us, we are collaborating with each other to push the same ecosystem. So far it's been great. Yeah.
Yeah. On that point, so our two main grant programs are the
Grants Council,
which Gunnar runs, and then also retro funding, which is what he's talking about, and the whole what we call the collective, which is the Optimism Foundation, OP Labs, all the other core devs, and then the DAO, are working towards one goal, which we set every 6 months. And for this 6 months, that goal is to reach 250 million in cross-chain transfers in the interoperable set of chains. And so our incentive programs and our grant programs are all trying to reach that goal, basically. Yeah.
Cool, nice. I didn't know this was in layer 1 before.
Yeah, the issue is that we were kind of an isolated ecosystem because if you're a developer, you needed to build your apps using JavaScript or TypeScript, but then we decided, no, at the end of the day, Ethereum is the best ecosystem to join, and yeah, we joined the Solidity team now.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, for the developers to build Solidity instead of JavaScript because it's way better.
Yeah, so now, before it wasn't, now it's an EVM chain.
Yeah, before it was literally a layer 1 that even if you know Solidity, you couldn't do anything. It was really isolated. We have a good ecosystem at that time, but yeah, nothing like Ethereum.
Yeah. Okay. Very interesting. It's very interesting what's happening. I also think that, I have my own opinions, but I also think that Optimism is probably the most forward-looking ecosystem right now in some senses, at least when it comes to governance and building what was actually the initial vision of Ethereum. Ethereum wanted to scale by shards. Shards are like different chains connected. Optimism is like doing it's shard-ish, I guess you could say. It's like different chains that have different opinions, different ways to build. I don't know, Coinbase, Base right now is the biggest OP chain right now, and they have like their own products, Coinbase products built in and whatever. But at the end of the day, I guess the end goal of Interop is sort of getting them to work as shards on a single chain kind of thing. Which is pretty cool, if you ask me.
We are the shard. We are the sharding.
Exactly. It's a good model because then Ethereum, what it does is outsources all of that innovation instead of having to do everything at layer 1.
Exactly.
And you guys are solving probably the biggest issue of Ethereum, which was sharding.
Excuse me. Yes, I was just thinking about what Ethereum is supposed to do, but takes years to do.
Yeah.
Eventually they do it. It's like L2s don't make sense, or that you're doing something different. Because let's say Vitalik says, okay, sharding is now, we have this many transactions per second, so what would you go to layer 2 if you can do just Ethereum?
What I'm seeing, this is my personal opinion, has nothing to do with the Grants Council, but what I'm seeing is that every chain is becoming something specific, right? It's like every chain is doing something that it's good at. You have a general use chain, which is Base, basically, and OP mainnet too. But then you see things like Zora, and they are focusing on NFTs, strictly NFTs, and once they become interoperable, it's very easy to use what they have, and so what you will see is that even if sharding comes to life in Ethereum, you still, as a business, you still want some sort of customization for you, right? And so the chains will become that, I'm in the team that everything will be a chain in the future, like small, but everything will be a chain for me.
That's spicy.
So general layer 2s, layer 1s will become more.
General layer 2s, I mean, you can have 1 or 2s, but even Base, it's more finance oriented than any other thing, right? But they are general.
Yeah, I believe layer 2s will win to Ethereum eventually to a lot of things, because while they are, doing whatever Vitalik or they do, and you're building and you're doing something, thinking because they are afraid of the changes because of
But
all the money that is on Ethereum.
I'm excited because, for example, if you think on Sony, which is from Sony, right? Sony is one of the biggest patent holders in the world, right? So we don't have a patent chain so far,
Okay.
you know? And that's not a general use, that's a very specific use of a chain. So they can become this patent chain if they want, you know?
I also think, well, you have to take into account that it's hard to be customizable when you are designing the super chain, I guess, and you guys can correct me. So right now it's all like full EVM compatible, but I would expect major customization in the future. You wanted to say something?
Yeah, I
as
just
well?
wanted to add that I think the Ethereum vision is also aligned and allowing the SuperChains to take over, because the blockchain trilemma is that Ethereum cannot be decentralized, scalable, and secure at the same time. So that's why the layer 2s are coming to tackle that scalability issue, while Ethereum will remain decentralized and secure. And then last year, Ethereum proved this EIP, I forgot the number right now, but about the blocks. Blocks is binary large objects. And then that allows all the layer 2s to kind of pack their blocks and then submit all these transactions in an Ethereum block. So at the end of the day, Ethereum is kind of playing in favor about all the layer 2s and yeah, kind of going through the same place instead of just taking like different directions. So yeah, I think Ethereum, instead of competing or taking over, is kind of allowing the layer 2s to come and support.
But if Ethereum becomes fast and cheap, will be the same, because anyway there will be activity for all.
I think the layer 2s will become faster and cheaper. I mean,
No,
It's
the
sort of
issue-
how servers work in Web2 is like, well, there's not enough servers anyway, so and it's also cool to
Yeah.
say, well, Ethereum is cool, but it's cooler to say, hey, I have my own chain. So, it's like the case of Coinbase, Kraken, or Sony, whatever. They could use Ethereum, but it's cooler if you say, hey, I have my own chain, I do what I want.
If you have to make a metaphor, it's like you have the state, which is Ethereum, and then you have the bank. And the bank has its own servers, its own transactions, its own clients, and that's the layer 2. No matter how big the settlement layer becomes, you will always need a bank, and you always need to scale to the point of one person,
But do you sacrifice security with the layer 2s or no?
No, because you pack the transactions and you put it on the layer 1.
Yeah, but
That's what the layer
you're
2.
saving data somehow, because there's no free batch. So
That's another conversation. Layer 2s have stages, what they call stages, and at the ultimate stage, they are like almost like using Ethereum. You have multiple ways, backstops, and everything to be full secure. Right now, there's a mix of stages. No one is stage 2, I think. But they are there at the very least. All layer 2s, at least on the OP stack, have the forced transactions. So in any case, you can always get your money back, which is what happened with Gitcoin's layer 2, for example. The wind down was nice, nothing happened. A lot of your questions are very into the future. We'll need to see. Maybe layer 2s fail, maybe not. We'll have to see. They are a good bet in maximizing innovation because they can move faster than the layer 1. So we'll see what happens in the future. Let's get back on course for a bit. Those are very good questions. We can talk about it later. I have some opinions that I may not be that welcoming here right now. We go back a bit with governance. How the governance system is being built, or how do you think? I got lost. How do you think? How it's going to balance the power between the stakeholders in the super chain?
Yeah, that's a really important question. So one thing is our system is designed differently to balance power just like more fundamentally. So we have one voting system that's token weighted, and we have one voting system that's one member, one vote. So you already like cut the dynamics of plutocracy in half basically by having this system. But then within the token weighted system, we have to balance, it probably looks like 50 large delegates that we need to balance power among, as opposed to like 5 million very small delegates. So we're very intentional about that. Like, think about the mechanism to distribute voting power, and we have different ways to measure this. But then it's also important to have chains that might have slightly different incentives. For example, we have Kraken, Coinbase, and Uniswap. They all kind of balance each other out. And then you also have, like, for example, service providers, chain service providers that have the opposite incentives of chains. So it's just getting like the right combination of participants, and then just having a voting power distribution that doesn't allow for one of them to basically have like 30% voting power or something, which is something that we're working on. I don't think other DAOs have a mechanism like this, but you can design a mechanism that monitors the distribution of voting power, and then if a certain event occurs, does a rebalancing. It's like portfolio rebalancing, basically.
Cool. Nice. We continue with you, Gona.
Okay.
Right now, can any project on the SuperChain apply for this season, or like what are the limitations?
I mean, if you are TVL oriented, you can apply, right? It's what we're focusing right now. If you want to bring TVL to the SuperChain and you want to become interoperable, you should be applying right now. And I'll say you don't need to be in OP mainnet. We have a registry that I can share later. It's a link where we can show all the chains that are compatible with the grants. And so it's just, there's different things like there's a few chains that are very committed and they already handle the keys. I think that they are marked as green. And then there's some that are orange, which means they committed, they just didn't handle the keys yet to the SuperChain. All of them are eligible. All major chains are there. So we are getting grants not only for OP mainnet, but Base, Unichain, Inc, Selenium, all those chains are getting grants from us.
You said before there were 20 chains, or
give or take, I think it's 20 to 27 chains so far. It's a registry that gets updated, so bear with me there.
So projects building finance applications, let's say, on any of those chains can apply to get help to raise TVL, to raise Interop compatible TVL.
Exactly, and the commitment should be that the TVL they raise is Interop ready.
Okay.
You know?
So with the Super ERC20
Yeah,
standard and all that.
you can choose the Super ERC20 standard, but it's not mandatory for
Okay,
us.
okay.
If you want to use a CTT from Chainlink or whatever other technology, it's fine.
Okay. Oh, nice. I
We
didn't
like
know that.
Super ERC20.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I guess so. Let's see what other question we have here. Okay, Santiago, keeping on governance, how is Lisk being governed right now? Where are the as a chain in the SuperChain? Where's your place in governance? What do you keep for yourself, and what's also?
Yeah, so we actually just launched mainnet last year in November during DevCon, and we have the first proposal that got accepted around October. So we have a Lisk DAO, and we designated 15 million of Lisk tokens per year. Right now, we are actually kind of copying a little bit of the optimism governance too. So we have seasons. So right now we're on the season 1, and we have a proposal that just got passed last week about giving 600,000 tokens to builders grants, and then 400,000 Lisk tokens to builders programs too. Yeah, something about builders. 1 million Lisk tokens in grants and programs for builders. But yeah, in general, we are kind of governed by this Lisk DAO as well, trying to follow the same governance path that Optimism is taking.
Nice, interesting, very interesting. If I knew how to do a single line of code, I would be applying. But unfortunately, I don't. So I just can make jokes, bad jokes. Next one is for you again, Lavande. So the OP, the collective, I guess, governs over the SuperChain. But how much do you also influence the governance of each individual chain, you think?
Yeah. So if you're like a chain in the SuperChain, you'll participate in Optimism governance. You can think of that as like the federal government, but you might also have your own token. and have your own governance system. And so there's different ways, and it's up to the chain how they want to manage that. They can just like appoint a representative to be the base delegate or whatever. They can use their token, like, think of an example.
Peg to OP, something like
No, you could use like Uni, for example. This is a bad example. It's like controversial right now, but you could use the Uni token to have like Uni DAO vote on an optimism proposal, and then cast your votes in OP according to how the DAO wants those cast. You could choose to do that. You could use the Uni token to elect your representative that's gonna represent Uni in optimism governance. But that's the choice of the chain, basically. And then the chain's governance will govern like their local parameters. You can think of that as like the state government, basically. But the optimism governance will govern the OP stack protocol upgrades, and then the treasury that's shared between all the chains. And the reason it's shared is because they contribute 15% of their revenue to that treasury, and then it goes out in incentive programs that benefit all the chains that qualify, basically.
So we could say that the collective sets the playground, and then within the playground, everyone can play a bit there. Okay. Okay. And right now, well, this is there any? Most of the OP chains in the SuperChain don't have governance, at least not like token governance, right?
Yeah. So because they don't have their own token, which might change, but you can think of like what you were describing is like they govern the shared resources, which is the treasury and OP stack, but then they have autonomy to do what they want within their own ecosystem.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this is a joke, just by the way, but that was on Alpha. She said, not now. So maybe an opportunity to farm some optimism chains. I don't know. Next one. Okay. We are not even halfway through the governance this season. Is there anything cool, anything worth sharing that has happened already?
For me, I think we were surprised of how all the big projects from even outside the SuperChain came to Grants Council. Like you have Morpho, you have Spark, you have Aave coming for a grant, you have all the big DeFi projects are here. And we said, okay, now we're asking like, I don't know, Aave that they need to be interoperable, you know? And suddenly it's like the Grants Council became this growth of the collective, right? This BD team that it's like asking huge projects, hey, you need to come up with this solution, you know? That was a nice change. It's like if you want a grant, please use these standards on that. That was surprising. Like we didn't expect to have the biggest projects on the first cycle. You know, we were like, okay, smaller projects first, and then Uniswap will come. You know, and Uniswap drops like a bomb straight on the first week. It's like, okay, we're dealing with Uniswap first. Don't worry. That was amazing. And the most amazing thing was how collaborative everyone was on the other side. Like everyone was interested in becoming interoperable. I thought we were going to fight, you know, like, yeah, I'll give you these OP tokens, but you need to do this, that, and they no, I just want the money. No, they want to become interoperable. That's very nice to see.
That's really cool. Did you ever imagine that it was going to be so much, or I don't know if so much work, but you know, that you were going to get to do so many things when you started contributing?
So it became a reality when I saw the members that were elected for the Grants Council. Like you got Jack from Velodrome, who is the biggest TDL project in the SuperChain. Then you have Matt, who's very well connected with Morpho, Elder, and another. So then you have GFX, which is one of the biggest maker DAO delegates, and it's like, okay, I have heavyweights here, right? And they are very well connected, and they will spread the word about the grant. So I was, the moment the nominees were elected, I was like, we're fucking going, yeah.
Yes, let's go.
Yeah.
I also think it sounds cool, but I also think that the good thing about the Ethereum community in general is that it's very supportive. So if you enter to build the SuperChain, it's because you know that eventually you'll have to support the SuperChain back. Going with that, well, not actually, it's not that similar, but whatever it is now. For you, Santiago, you said at the beginning that Lisk seems to be very focused in emerging markets, from what I understand. How do you think being part of an ecosystem like the SuperChain is going to help that?
I think to summarize, maybe the answer can be that we are going to try to build a emerging markets interoperability. So, for example, something that can be really good about blockchain is that you build something here, but then it can be used in Colombia or in Europe, in Africa, right? But at the end of the day, it's more about the distribution and how I can get to a user in Africa. And that's something that for sure we are going to try to leverage. We have a really strong presence in Asia. We already have, for example, a program with the Minister of Informatics and Communications in Indonesia. In Africa, it's actually our main focus. We already have a lot of programs for educational programs, 2 hubs where people can go and co-live with other people in Kenya and Ghana. And then what we are doing this year is try to come here to Latin America to see what's going on, how we can get involved with the people, how we can support the founders, and yeah, that's why we have the team here coming to Crecimiento for the whole year since December. But that would be the main thing, how we can build this layer of interoperability emerging markets. And that would be a good thing that maybe will stand out for Lisk.
Oh, that's very commendable, and I think important. Probably hearing these things is what gets me excited about Ethereum in general, despite the current conditions. And also think, if I may, I also think that being part of something like the SuperChain simply allows you to get, people that use Coinbase regularly to all of a sudden get into Lisk, and somehow that they end up in Asia doing something, like what you just said, instead of being on a L1 in its own ecosystem, which is harder. Yeah, that was a smart move, if you ask me. Cool.
Smart people here, dude.
Yes, smart people. Yes. I feel.
Damn.
No, damn. I'm just a lady. You saw my PFP, whatever. We go back with La Bande, and we're almost finishing with at least my questions. So now we are looking a bit more into the future.
Yeah.
How do you see the governance of the system evolving? More community driven? How much time do you think that the foundation will be so involved? Or how do you see it?
Yeah, we're doing progressive decentralization. I think I've studied a lot of DAOs. In my opinion, it's better to go slow and decentralize once than to go fast and then have it be a disaster and then re-centralize 3 times, which is what you see a lot. So I don't know the exact time frame, but I know that we're going to go slower and try to do it properly once. So maybe it'll take us a little bit longer. The way that we see it evolving is that it becomes highly automated and algorithmic. And then the voters express values basically and can be a human in the loop or a human override. But that's the big push that we're making, which is the A in DAO, right? The automated part. So ideally it's most of governance becomes the governance of algorithms basically, which is what lots of things in the world are going to move towards. And so that makes DAOs actually very important and relevant in that conversation. But that's how we see it evolving basically.
Nice. I guess, I'm not that into governance lately, but I guess a lot of this is also changing with AI agents and all that. It's another door you open for automation. Cool. Very nice. Again, we're almost finishing. If anyone has any questions or wants us to translate very quickly something, please, this is the time. And I have one last question for Santiago as well here. So the other question was about the SuperChain to Lisk. This one is Lisk to the SuperChain. How do you think you guys can contribute back? How do you think that Lisk really, how do you think that leaks contributes to the superchain?
We can add value to the super
Yeah,
chain.
yeah.
I think providing TVL.
I was
Okay,
going to
fair,
say,
fair.
I was going to say sequencer running.
Yeah, so I would say that just being diverse, because at the end the super chain will focus on having different, I was gonna say, like different kind of focus. One chain that will focus on real world assets, one on finance. So we will try to be the chain for founders in emerging markets. There's also Celo based that are trying to do something similar, at least in Africa. I don't know if they're really strong in South America. But yeah, I think just by trying to do this work of founders in emerging markets will be our little 2 cents to the super chain,
Nice.
and that will be reflected in TVL hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure.
Now that you bring Silo, I'm now representing the Silo Regional Council here, and then that I'm pretty excited on knowing how it will be kind of like the way to collaborate in this super chain ecosystem, as our focus is now creating these regional DAOs, and we created this regional council to actually manage the governance. And we were discussing on how to integrate these stablecoins with Memto, because that's our way of later having these activities here. And it would be a super nice, well, my question is, how can we later work together from Silo and this?
Yeah, I think, I'm also not sure, last time we had a panel with Mariano, from the head of engineering from
Yes.
Celo, and I don't remember, but there was like a specific thing from Celo that doesn't allow to share the interoperability or something like that from
I
the
think
super
so,
chain.
yeah.
But yeah, to kind of answer the question more in terms of partnerships, we are really open to collaborate with any chain of the super chain. Actually, I just came from Ethiopia. We have a 1 month builder residency, and we sponsor 10 developers from different countries, Togo, Cameroon, Nigeria, to come to build this builder residency in Ethiopia. And 2 of them were from base. And then there's also one from Celo, and yeah, the idea is that collaboration over competition, so we are really open to have any partnerships and try to conquer together. Yeah.
Yep. Are we good with time? ¿Estamos bien de tiempo? Creo que sí, ¿no?
Questions?
Oh, okay. Well, no, se me iba en español. I do have one last question. Can be very quick. More into the future. I'm very curious about this one, and any of you guys can respond, or all the three. Now with the latest movements on Ethereum, on the wider Ethereum, to get everyone interoperable, how do you think the superchain fits into a wider interop system?
I'll say it's nice to have an idea, right? And say, hey, let's all become interoperable. And then someone sits down and say, okay, how? You know?
Okay.
And I think the superchain is ahead on that experiment. That's what is happening, right?
Yeah,
That
definitely.
everyone sat down and say, okay, we need to end this PvP because we are all scaling Ethereum. Perfect. So how do we do it? And there's like basically 3 big experiments into how to become interoperable. I think optimism has always lead that experiment with the superchain.
Yeah, there was like this big Ethereum call, and Ben Jones from Optimism was speaking there about basically like if the direction we want to go in is based on our native rollups, then we'll be like committed to that vision for Ethereum, and we'll work on the EIPs like we've always done in the past, basically.
I think the beauty of the superchain now is that everyone wants to have interoperability, but no one was setting like a really good standards. So with the superchain, it kind of took adoption. You can see big players like the Sony, Kraken, Base adopting the superchain. So I think that would be maybe the competitive advantage of the superchain, because it's taking adoption, it's having big people involved into this, and yeah, that's how we're going to scale Ethereum together.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I do agree. I think, well, to your question, for example, Optimism since the day one is very focused on interoperability. You see Arbitrum that you can deploy smart contracts in other languages. You see Eclipse running the Solana virtual machine, so you kind of like get a lot of competition that Ethereum itself wouldn't have been able to. Now I guess we'll see what happens with the wider interop. But yes, I agree. SuperChain is ready to do it this year. No, it's to start. some of that.
But it's like what Ben said. Basically, if there's something better and everyone agrees on something better,
Okay.
we'll do it.
Yeah.
And then the important part is to make sure that it's designed in a way, right? That's why you want to be involved in the EMP process, that
Right,
it's
right.
compatible. But at least the interop that we're going to ship is at least like a reference implementation for the industry, right? At a
Yeah.
minimum. So.
Yeah. Well, we'll see if by the Connect here in Argentina we have some other news, hopefully. And I don't know if there's any other quick question, and if not, thank you all. Okay, very quick, please.
Small
Yes.
question about the DAO. Is there a legal treatment of the DAO? I'm thinking, let's say a government says, I think you have to stop this because I think it's wrong, and you have to intervene. How is it shielded so
Yeah.
it doesn't happen?
The answer right now is that all that is on the foundation, basically. So we have this progressive decentralization, and part of it is because right now, at this stage of decentralization, the foundation takes on all that risk, not the DAO.
It's a pretty basic question. I'm new in blockchain environment, so I don't get if Optimism is a superchain and what a superchain allows you to do in blockchain.
Okay, so Optimism was the first chain to deploy the OP stack, right? And so a few other chains followed that. But the superchain is all those OP stack, not just OP mainnet, but Base and all those chains to become interoperable, to be ready to go in just one block. You know, that's the superchain. The superchain is not just OP mainnet, but all those.
Okay, for example, Polkadot is a superchain.
Oh, no, I wouldn't say that because they don't follow the standard. So to become part of the superchain, you need to use the OP stack, which is the standard, right?
Okay.
So your chain needs to be EVM compatible with OP stack.
I think, well, if I make like brand to some extent, Polkadot is an interoperable blockchain, and there's a few interoperable blockchains. SuperChain is the interoperable system of Optimism. I think that's
Okay.
a good way to put it.
Yeah, I think the parachains of Polkadot can be like the layer 2s of the superchain. So it's kind of like the same.
Yeah. And what you have is simple multiple chains, and ideally they would work as one for you, the user, but we are not quite there yet. Okay, I think,
Close, very close.
yeah.
If someone is using and building on the open stack,
Can you,
Louder.
ladder?
yeah,
Okay.
please.
So if someone is building and using the OP stack, does that mean they automatically qualify for using the superchain? And then the second part of the question is, do they also participate in the bicameral governance that is in Optimism just by using the OP stack?
I know you're looking at me, but those definitions
Yeah,
I
I'm
think
gonna-
is very
Yeah. So we have different definitions. Basically, anyone using the OP stack that contributes revenue back to the shared treasury is in this what we call the superchain ecosystem. If you want to be in the quote superchain, which basically means shared upgrades, then you need to be on this what we call the standard config, so that the Security Council can upgrade your chain.
So that means like giving the permission to the Security Council to make the upgrades.
Yes.
It's that, but your chain also we need standardization, so we can just upgrade all at once. So that's why it matters if you're on the standard config or not.
And then when do you get to participate in governance?
Anyone can participate in governance. So if a chain that's not on the standard config wants to go buy a bunch of OP tokens, they can. So it's permissionless, I guess is
But
another
then
way to
there's
say it.
two forms of governance, right? There's the token house and the citizen,
Yeah.
right? So then, yeah, you can always go buy tokens and then participate in that way. But
Yeah.
how do you actually join the citizen house?
Yeah, the way that citizens are determined will also be like formulaic, and it's a formula that we're developing now. So we've been doing a bunch of experiments to collect data on how different types of people or people with different attestations vote on things, so we can propose the formula to governance.
Okay, cool. Well, thanks everyone for joining. The panel is over. If you want to talk more in some off the record opinions, find us outside.